Shalom, Chabarim, Shalom. This is Yadon, a.k.a. Ras Iadonis Tafari LOJ, Line of Judah Society, Rastafari Israelites right here. Now, we address this particular subject matter. Okay, let's do this right there. Yeah, we addressed the subject matter on our podcast. We actually went into, I think an hour, it was maybe an hour and a half on the Wednesday podcast, February 19th, Rastafari Israelites. I think it's maybe we started out maybe about half an hour or so into the podcast. In fact, we're trying to actually make that, a kind of a standalone in and of itself, because we was able to go through the scripture and to really prove, this whole subject matter, and call it slavery and white Christianity, right? No slave in the KJV 1611. There's really no slave there. There's no slave in the King James Version of the Bible. I mean, if you look it up, if you actually look at 1611 King James Bible, you say, why are you saying the 1611? There's these new Bibles, there's these new translations that are out. They've been out for maybe about 20 to 30 years. And they become more popular now with like social media, the internet. Ones can go to different websites and they offer you a whole plethora of different Bible versions other than the so-called traditional, the standard King James Version, right? If you go into those Bibles, they will have, it's like a replacement theology, right? It's called replacement theology. In fact, that was going to be part of my title, White Christianity, or Slavery and White Christianity, the Slave Replacement Theology. I was going to call it like the white lie, like no slave in the Bible. Both of these are kind of working titles because it's zooming in on the half of the story that it seems as though a lot of people are kind of like, they're not putting two and two together, and hopefully we help the mass to mass, right? We want the math to mass, because a lot of ones, the math ain't mathing, it ain't adding up, right? Because see, these newer Bibles today, and we kind of showed this already, but we need to show this again. But this right here is kind of like a follow-up, and also for the Rastafari Jews, Rastafari, the Yehudi channel right there. But on our the live stream channel, Rastafari Israelites, also on Rastafari Groundation, that's like the channel too. But Rastafari Israelites, you have more of the fuller, presentation from February 19th, 2025. That particular Wednesday, the Wednesday podcast. Now, it was interesting, we touched on Elohim and gods and judges, from Psalm 82 and 6. We broke that down, got to the very groundation. Doesn't mean a heavenly, some heavenly council, and it's not talking about other gods of other nations. No, it's talking about the Israelite judges, because we're in Mishpatim, right? We're in the Parashah Mishpatim, Torah portion, reading and feeding. Exodus chapter 18 to I think like 20, was it to 23, 24? Exodus chapter, well, no, actually, that was the previous one. Because we're here after the Exodus, in the post-Exodus part of the Torah reading and feeding and Torah studies, right? And we're here in Exodus chapter, which chapter are we in? We're in Exodus chapter 21, right? 21 and 1 to 24:18. There we go, right? So Mishpatim, judgments. It's called judgments. It's Torah reading and feeding. The judgments of HaTorah, right? But one thing that's key right here, as we go through the Torah, narrative, both in the Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, and then we look at the KJV, something very interesting. That's why what you see on the screen right there, servant does not equal slave, and servitude does not equal enslavement. Because there's this white lie, can we call it a white lie, of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant time, and a lot of apologists, Christians, they kind of gloss over it. And I believe some of them are intelligent enough to know that they're glossing over it, but they're not really being truthful, right? That in the Bibles that they were reading, right? The Protestants, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, the whole mythology. What's the mythology of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants? Well, they came to America, this new world, to escape religious persecution, right? And basically to read the Bible and live according to the Bible, right? And right before that, in the history was the Protestant Reformation, the time of the Protestant, the Church of Sardis. That's the Church of Sardis, the Protestant Reformation, the Church of Sardis. When we look in Revelation concerning the 7 churches and the times of the church, where it says the church age was called by some scholars the church age. So going from the first century time all the way to our time. So many of us see that we're in the Laodicean church. This is speaking about the churches that are mentioned in Revelation. But we're zooming in on Sardis, to speak about the Protestant so-called Reformation. So here we go right here, Revelation chapter 3. This is speaking about the Protestant Reformation. And to the angel of the church in Sardis write, these things saith he that hath the 7 spirits of God of Elohim and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest and art dead. Be watchful and strengthen the things that remain, that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before God, or before Elohim. Right? We come from the Hebrew. We're not going to get into the Greek, theos, that, right? But here it says, notice what it says right here. This is the 5th of the 7 churches mentioned. And we're saying that these 7 churches in Revelation, they cover the different, the 7 church ages, right? Not talking about the little mini denomination, but some of them are very significant, like the Protestants, for example. When we come to Revelation chapter 3, verse 1, it speaks about, and to the angel, right, the teacher, the angel of the church in Sardis, right, these things saith he that have the 7 spirits of Elohim and the 7 stars. And if you study Revelation, you see that in the beginning, in the first chapter, speaking about Yeshua, HaNotzri, having those, the 7 spirits of God, the Lamb, and also walking amidst the, the 7 stars and the candlesticks, the 7 branches, all of that. The symbolism bringing out the connection here at chapter 3. And he says, I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest and art dead. So the living, this whole living and dead, so the Christianity, right, of the Protestant so-called Christianity. That's why we call it this slavery, right, and white Christianity. More correctly, we could say Gentile Christianity, because many of the Hebrew Israelite, many of our brothers, they generally just reject the whole thing. They say, well, Christianity is not in the Bible, and technically speaking, it's not. But when we speak about Christian and being a Christian, or one, even with that name of those from before that were faithful, right? There was not only the Roman church. Some people think that Rome, the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestants, that's all the Christians in the world, right? But they're just myopic like that. There was the Eastern Orthodox, there was the Oriental Church, like the Ethiopian Church, and that kind of points us to the Church of Philadelphia, Church of Brotherly Love. We'll bring that forward. But notice what it said next to this church, the Protestant church. Be watchful and strengthen the things that remain and that are ready to die. Be watchful and strengthen the things that remain, that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before Elohim. It says, remember therefore, right, how thou hast received. How did the Europeans, white folks in Europe, receive the gospel? There's a whole half of the story, concerning Israelites and black people, right? We say Ethiopian Hebrews and other Israelites up in Europe, right? They try to whitewash that whole story right there. But when it says, remember how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent, if therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, right? The Protestant church, right? The Protestant church that came out of Pergamon and the Roman Catholic Catholicism, which was a previous church to this church here, right? And thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee, right? Then it says here, thou hast a few names, even in Sardis. We talk about ones like Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr. No, not that one, not that guy. No, we're talking about Martin Luther, right? The Protestant reformer, right? And others. We talk about Tyndale, Wycliffe, these who were martyred, because they wanted to translate the Bible into the vulgar or the common languages out of the Latin. At that time, the Roman Catholic Church had everything sealed up in Latin, and only the priests really had access to the scriptures, and the regular people couldn't read scripture for themselves, right? So here, in speaking to the Protestantism, so in order to talk about the enslavement of the once lost, now found, Beta Israel, black people, right? African-related people here in the Americas and Caribbean, right? We have to make these links, these connections here. So here we're looking at Protestantism, right, in the light of Revelation, and the fifth of the seven churches, the church in Sardis, where it says, thou hast a few names, even in Sardis, that have not defiled their garments. What is the Bible speaking of this defilement? Was Christianity, right, enslavement, white Christianity's slavery, a defilement of their garments? Seeing that slavery is not in the Bible, we're going to stand on this, that slavery is not in the Bible. Right? Slavery is not in the Bible. We might have to just do a video saying just slavery is not in the Bible. Right? And we can basically prove it this quickly. Maybe this could be a good short. Slavery is not in the Bible. For example, look up in the KJV. And I keep saying KJV. A lot of people say, why do you say the KJV? Because in these other silly Bibles or later day, I don't want to call them silly. Right? Because some of them, we even utilize them in our studies as a cross-reference. Right? But it's putting things in proper order. Right? The King James Version of the Bible, this was the 400-year Bible during the time of the crime. So we're going to the Bible that was being read during the time of the crime, the Protestant Bible. Protestantism, the connection with the KJV, the King James Version of the Bible, and the Protestant Reformation. That in the eyes of Elohim Ha'ab and Yeshua HaMoshiach here in Revelation, is connected with the church, the angel, the church of Sardis, right? Which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me, right, in white. Not saying they're going to be white people, but speaking about the garments of righteousness. We have to say this because there's been a lot of white lies. You know what I mean? So, people get confused, right? Purposely. For they are worthy, right? And then it says right here, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment. But I will not blot out his name out of the book of life. But I will confess his name before, right, my Father and before his angels. So to the degree we even would confess ones like Martin Luther, because I don't see anything directly in his works, his writings, that seek to endorse slavery, right, or enslavement over there in Europe. Because even there's a black presence in Europe, right? I say black instead of saying African, because African is a later day terminology that confuses the issue. We like to go to the source. So at the time of the crime, right? Check, let's say Negro, right? Right? But I will confess his name before my Father and his angels. And then it ends right here, verse 6, right? He that hath an ear, right? He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith to the churches. All right? So, was slavery in the Bible of slave master? Slavery was not in the Bible of slave masters. Slave master's Bible, basically, the Bible of the Protestant, time of the Protestant, was the 1611 King James Version of the Bible. And even if you go to Geneva Bible, you'll find a similar read on there. This word slave come from a group of people known as the Slavs. Go Google it. Google Slav, the Slavs, S-L-A-V. Drop the E, right? That's where they get this word Slav, slavery from, right? It's like a 3-card Monte, right? It's like a spellcraft. That's why they call it spelling. It's word. It's a game with words. It's grammar, right? It's grimoire, right? They play games with words, right? Let me show you, for example, proof that slavery is not in the Bible. Let's do this right here. Here's the proof that slavery is not in the Bible. Let's just do this right here. We're talking about slave masters' Bible, not these later day Bibles. Because see, these later day Bibles can tell you whatever because they were written after that time. Here we have slavery to show you that we've already kind of been down this road right here. Let's go over here, KJV. So we're going to search. Slavery does not appear. There's 0 verses for slavery in the Bible. You know, so now they're trying to blame the Bible, right? White Christianity tries to blame the Bible, you know, right? And some detractors try to blame the Bible. They say, well, it's the Bible, right? Because the Bible, right? The white man did what he did, the so-called European, right? Anglo-American, the slave masters over here in Americas did to our ancestors what they did because it was in the Bible. Well, first of all, how could they have slavery because of the Bible, but the Bible does not speak about slavery? That's why we say right there that you see on the screen, servant does not equal slave. And servitude does not equal enslavement. That's the trick. So if you are believing that servant, slave is all the same thing, then you've been tricked. You've been tricked. You know, it's like an idiot savant. You know, you've been tricked. You might know some things, but the thing you should know is that these are 2 different words. And isn't it interesting when we look at the Bible? Let's go over here, right here, right? Let's look at the Bible right here, right? Let's do another word search, right? Let's take, right? Let's look up slave, right? And we touched on this before, right? Jeremiah, we went into more detail on the February 19th podcast, right? February 19th into the 20th. It's from the Wednesday podcast, right? Jeremiah 2:14, it says, Israel a servant. You see the word servant? The word servant has the H5650 behind it because it's a real word there in the Bible, right? Ebed. Now, here's what they do in the a lot of the definitions. They will put slave, right, in front of servant. But what it should read is servant. Servant, man, servant. Notice this word here, servant, subjects. Look at it, servant worshipers. Why didn't they put slave there? Slave of God. Now, of course, nowadays you say, I'm a slave of God, Yeah, but even if you are a slave of God, God, the true God, is not going to do anything like what, you know, the so-called, you know, white man did to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, so-called black and brown people. The entry, right? Servant, right? In special sense, the prophets were servants. So what we're trying to say right here is the proper term is servant, right? As we show on the meme that we just showed you before, servant does not equal, that's why we have the not equal sign, right? Does not equal slave, right? That's the first trick, right? That's the first trick they play, right? They trick trapping, first trick they play. Down here, ironically, Strong's Concordance actually gets it better than BDB. Now we use these 2 points of reference, Brown's Drivers Briggs definition, right? And also Strong's to compare and contrast. Notice they say a servant, right? It could be a bond servant, a bondmaid, right? A bond servant, right? A man servant, and a man servant, right? And a maid servant. But the term is servant. I want you to get that right there, servant. Notice here, we looked up the word slave in the King James Version. We're searching the King James Version of the Bible. Notice there's only 2 verses. Based on all the lies they try to tell us that, oh, the white man did what he did because slavery's in the Bible. Oh, he got that from the Bible, and the Bible talk about slave. And what happens is that people are reading these later day Bibles, right? These latter day Bibles, right? Look how BSB, see, these are the type of Bibles they be reading. BSB, right? Is Israel a slave? Was he born into slavery? Why then has he become prey? And then they try to tell us that slavery always existed. Slavery could not always exist because the term Slav did not exist. Bondage existed, right? Servant and servitude existed, right? Captivity also existed, but the term slave comes from the term Slav. Slav is a group of people. See, that's a whole other, study there. And if you haven't really connected the dots, ask the question, why did they not call the black people servants? Because they wasn't following the Bible, right? Was he born into slavery? Now that's the later day. That wasn't, the BSB wasn't there 400 years. During the time of the crime, during the time of the enslavement, right, of black and brown people in America, that Bible wasn't there. Neither was the easy English. These are all later day Bibles intended to confuse, right? The lazy. Because when you study, you begin to say, well, why they flip up that word? Why they inserting this word slave, right? Notice how they flip this around from how it should read. Israel's people are not slaves born to be servants. What that's not even there. But they have become slaves to their enemies. What? Slaves to their enemies? Here's the Hebrew. Ha'ebed Yisrael ima yelida bayit hu madua haya labaz. The correct or more correct translation is what KJV has, except notice that the word slave is italics. This is a rule of thumb with the King James, the better King James printed Bibles. Wherever you find the italicized words, right, 9 out of 10 times, and sometimes 11 out of 10, right, or 12 out of 10 times, right, to say basically that whenever you find italicized words, these words are not there in the original, whether it's the Old Testament, right, King James translation, or the New Testament. Those words are not there. They have been added by the translator as a kind of a crutch for the English speaker to bring out what the translator thinks is the sense that they are reading, right, within the Hebrew, right? But see, when people are reading, they don't have that biblical kind of intelligence or discernment, They read the italicized words as though they're actually there in the script. So if we read this sentence, right, as an intelligent reader, understanding the Hebrew, we just read the Hebrew right there, the Hebrew right here. Ha'ebed Yisrael, right? Ha'ebed Yisrael is Israel, and ebed, a servant. Ima yelid bayit hu, if he's born in the house, like if he's a homeborn, right? Im yalid bayit, right? Who, he, madua, right? What is known, like why, in the sense of what is known, cause me to know. Madua hayalabaz, how has he become, right, a spoil, right? How has he become a spoil, right? Labaz, baz, right? A spoil, booty. How has he become booty? How has black people become booty? Booty, right? A spoil. Robbery, a spoil, right? Talking about these here black people, we black people here in the Americas and the Caribbean in this 400 plus year experience. Now notice what it says. Israel, a servant. Why did they put the word slave there? Because you'll notice something, as we've been showing right here, right? When we show this right here, there's only 2 verses in the whole Bible where we have slave. In the King James, 400-year Bible, in 1611, the Bible was published, right? And in 2011, the Bible became 400 years old. And now we're in 2025, so we are over 400 years. So that means during the time of the crime of the enslavement of the black and the brown, once lost, now found sheeple of the Beit Yisrael, of Beta Israel, here in the Americas and the Caribbean, right? That was the Bible they were reading, right? So why do we only have 1 verse in the Old Testament where we have slave, and we have no verse in the KJV, right? Bible of the time of the crime of the enslavement of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Why don't we find that word there? So let's look at this thing. They say, well, slavery is because of the Bible. They blame slavery on the Bible. They say, well, the white man, he only did what he did because it was written in the Bible. That's a lie. Is that a white lie? That's a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant lie, right? But now notice here, in Revelation, right, is the only other place that the word slave sort of appears. Right here, the word slave that's highlighted right there, that's a ghost, right? That's a ghost. Notice homeborn is two words. Bayit is house, like bayit is house, right? Saying the long way, bayit, saying the short way, tightening the chord, bait. I would say beta. It's the house, Beta Israel, the house of Israel, right? Here we have bait and we have yalid, right? Bait yalid, ima yalid, bayit who? If he was born in the house, right? Madua, haya labaz. How has he become labaz? Spoiled. Spoiled of what? Right? What were black people, the Beta Israel? We were spoiled of everything: our language, our history, our culture, who we were. You know, they say they brought us from Africa. We're in Africa. They can't really be precise. Somewhere over there. Then they said we used to run around, take DNA tests. I mean, yeah, we can do all of this and that, but a lot of that's really fugazi on a certain level, right? To this point here. The point is that the word slave is only to be found in two places in the whole King James Version of the Bible. So how did the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant get slavery and even the term slave, right? So that lie, when they say that, well, it's because of the Bible that we were treated the way we were treated because it's in the Bible. It's the Bible. No, they lie, right? That's the lie right there. They lied to you, right? You know, and people go around believing the lie. But hopefully we will expose the lie and some people can come out into the truth, right? Revelation 18:13, when it's talking about what Babylon does business in, right? This is an interesting chapter here talking about Babylon is fallen, What Babylon do business in? Cinnamon and odors, verse 13, and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horse and chariots and slaves. Now somebody say, Yarden, got you, Yarden. Yarden, you're wrong. You see slavery right there and it's not italicized. You're right. It's not italicized. No, it's not italicized. But check this. Look at the note right here. Bodies. It's not even the term slaves. It's the term bodies. So when it's talking about the merchandise of Babylon, here in Revelation chapter 18, here it says chariots and bodies and souls. Bodies and souls, the heart, the bodies and the minds, the psyches. So that means that Babylon, right? Babylon, mystery Babylon, right? It does commodity in the bodies, right? People's bodies. It's not the term slave. Soma in the Greek means body. Body of men or body of animals. Like a dead body, a corpse. You know when you go around stealing body parts and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? The body parts, don't they do that? They be stealing body parts. Sometimes they be killing people and taking their body parts, right? Isn't that part of the body, the soma? And also the living body, right? You know, whether it's the corn, you know, or fashion, other ways. You know, people have all these body complexes because they might not be able to really sell themselves the way they want to sell themselves. You know, Deuteronomy 28:68 is also a poor translation where it says, and there you shall be sold, right, to your enemies for bondmen and bond. Even there it doesn't say for slaves, it says for bondmen and bondwomen, like captured men and no, you know what it actually says? It actually says, hita makartem, right? And there you will be selling yourselves. So you see, this is a part of the product of Babylon right here, right? Part of the product of Babylon. If we go further into the verse right here, what does it say? And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her. Over her, who's a her? Babylon, right? This system of things. For no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Then it breaks down their merchandise, right? Talking about all the things that Babylon does merchandise. Now, we study history, we will see that a great part of the Anglo-American, the Anglo-European, and the Anglo-American enterprise, right, the times of the Gentiles that we are still currently in, the Greco-Roman times of the Gentiles, right, we're in the end times of the nation states. England, Great Britain, right, was said to have ruled over and controlled nearly, 3/4 of the known world, right? They even have in their funeral dirge kind of an anthem, the anthem, and America picks up on that, because mother and daughter, Babylon and the daughter of Babylon, America, they pick up on that. They even say, Something about the waves and they will never be no slaves. That's actually part of the English anthem. Go look up the English anthem, look up the words, and read over the words for yourself. Right? So this chapter is talking about what happens during the fall of Babylon. Right? The fall of Babylon. Right? If you go through this chapter, we're not going to go through this whole chapter right here, but let's go all the way to the top right here. Right? And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils. Devils live there, live in Babylon. That's why, in reading this verse, it's almost like this might be why it's hard for some. This is why it says, the master says, ye must be born again. Why? Because Babylon is a cage. It's become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit. So those foul spirits, they're perfectly comfortable in Babylon. And a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Babylon is not a cage for every clean and loving bird, soul, right? But a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, of her fornication, right? And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are wax rich through the abundance of her delicacies. In the scripture it says that he who is joined with a harlot, right, with a harlot or the harlot, is one with a harlot, right? Talking about Babylon here. Remember, this is Revelation, right? It says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, me, as Hosea speaks to the Israelites, my people, me, right? That y'all be not partakers of her sins, the consequences, right? See, some want to act like, well, slavery, that was like, years ago, and now you're free, emancipation. Emancipation is not really freedom. Emancipation is emancipation. It means freeing from the hand, right? You're still not free from the man, right? You still don't know who you are, right? Do you? Right? Come out of her, my people. Well, that's a call to Ami, my brothers. Ami, as Hosea says, call my brothers Ami, and the sisters Ruhama, she who receives mercy, right? But here the word is, come out of her, my people, that y'all be not partakers of her sins, right? There are consequences to what occurred, right, during the 400-year period. There are consequences. And that y'all receive not of her plagues. There are consequences. For her sins have reached to heaven, and Elohim hath remembered her iniquities. What it says, reward her even as she rewarded you, right? She lied on the Bible. The Gentiles have inherited lies, right? They say they inherited lies. And double to her, double according to her works, right? What did she work, right? In the cup that she hath filled to her double, right? Right? She says she's a queen, the queendom. And what's interesting is that recently the Queen of England, she passed away. But it's not just speaking about a physical woman queen, right? He's thinking about Britannia. Britannia rules the waves, and they will never be no slave. Now the daughter, right, of Babylon, America on the rise, the Protestants, Reformation, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, right? Right, see, this is what it's all about right here. Because look, let's scroll down, right? The merchants. Wasn't it all about merchandise, right? They said slavery was all business, right? Where they brought materials from here to there and back and forth, Wasn't all about business. What is the triangular trade? They call it a triangular trade. You can look it up. Keywords, triangular trade. Look it up concerning slavery, right? It's all about merchandise, right? But here, concerning the end times, the end of the times of the Gentiles, right? You see, the Greco-Roman times have gone on for over 2,000 years, right? Roughly 2,000 years. For roughly the past 2,000 years, we have been in the times of the Gentile, the times of the Greco-Romans. That's why you have, from the Greeks, you have democracy, and from the Romans, you have republic. Since when you had democracy in a republic, right? A new thing. That's why it says that the last beast was most diverse from the other beasts, the systems, right? The governments of men and people. Here it says the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Right? And then it speaks of the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and of fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all theine wood. The theine wood is a sweet wood, sweet, right? And all manner, right? Vessels of ivory and all manner vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble. It's like we're going shopping online, right? Right? We can buy all these things. Notice that. We can get things from halfway around the world, from here, from there, right? Right? Because of this system of things that Revelation is exposing, right? So how does it connect with the enslavement of the Beta Israel here in the Americas and the Caribbean? Check. And cinnamon and odors and ointment and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves, or more correctly, bodies. See, that's a mistranslation. It's not, the word for slave in the Greek is doula, right? Doula, right? It's not soma. Soma, right? Anybody out there who knows basic Greek, right? The G4983 is the body both of men and animals. It can be a dead body, a corpse. And check this out. They even have the thing they call body parts, where they steal people's organs. And what they do, they it's a merchandise. It's merchandise, check, right? And living body as well. So both the living and the dead bodies they do business with, and the souls, or the what? The suke. The suke is the psyche, right? Psyche in the Koine Greek, the breath. But what the psyche really is, right? It's the seat of the feelings, desires, the affections, the aversions. This is the psychological state, right? So they do business in the psychological state, right? Notice on the internet, whenever something really is going around and is affecting people, what they call it? It's a viral, like a virus. It's a psychological virus. You know what I'm saying? That's all a part of business, right? That's all part of the business of Babylon, right? Babylon, what's the meaning of Babylon? Babylon means confusion. So it's necessary to keep the people in confusion about these terms and terminology, right? So briefly, simply here, servant does not equal slave, right? Servitude does not equal enslavement. These are two different businesses. Yes, they're similar. They can be similar, right? But they're not the same. It's like if I'm an employee, right? I know some of us, we have said this before, and some of y'all might be saying this now. Oh, I got to go back to the slave. Yeah, I've been on to slave. Your job, where you employ. But notice, the slave, you could always leave your job. You may not want to leave the job because you get the money you need to take care of yourself and your family. Get that, so you endure what you endure, right? And you act like you're a slave, but you're nowhere like the people who were enslaved, our ancestors who were enslaved, right? It's like servant. You're a servant. You're an employee. So we can say servant equals employee. Employment can equal servitude, because you basically are giving your service, right, your labor, right, for a payment, right? Servant, right? Servants, servants. You go to a hotel, right? You say, give me some more bath towels, or I need send up some food, some wine, this or that, or whatever, right? And they give you service. What do they call it? Room service. So a servant comes up and give you room service. Do you smack them around? Do you whip them? Do you beat them? Right? Do you call them an animal and then want to have sex with them? Bestiality. Right? You know what I mean? see how confusing it is? What is the meaning of Babylon? Babylon is confusion. Right? So just to get this particular point right here, slavery and white Christianity. Right? No slavery, right, in the King James Version of the Bible. I think I'm going to stick with that one right there. No slavery in the King James Version of the Bible, because this is the epicenter of the point here. We can kind of go to the next point, but let's kind of circle the wagons on this point. So we just showed you right there. If you look up in the King James Version of the Bible, that is the Bible that was read during the time of the crime, right? The King James Version of the Bible. If you want to go around to these other Bibles, the ISV, the NIV, the Easy Speaking Bible, the Easy English Bible, the Bible for retarded people, that have no reading comprehension. But you could go to all these kind of Bibles right there if you want to. You know what I'm saying? But to prove this point, because see, what happens sometimes, you see these posters, or I saw this poster some years ago, they'll say, slave, obey your master. And he said, that's what the white man was saying. Well, maybe he was saying that, but his Bible read servant. But he never treated the so-called black and the brown people as servants. He treated them as Slav. And here's the point. Where does Slav come from? What is the etymology of Slav? Okay, let's do this one together. Slave etymology, because we might have to pick up on a part 2 right here. Slave etymology. You see it right there. Slave etymology. The word slave, it comes from the old French word esclave. Esclave, is that it? Esclave? Which comes from the medieval Latin words sclavus. Right? Sclavus come from the Greek word sklavos, which come from the Slavic word, sklabenoi. Sklabenoi, meaning Slavs. I thought black people allegedly were Africans, right? They came from so-called Africa, even though that's a later day word that they made up, they coined and they superimposed on the continent, you know what I mean? And we run around, yes, Africans. No, it's just a political term, right? Use it politically. Don't get caught up, right? The word slave comes from the frequent enslavement of Slavs in Central Europe during the early Middle Ages. Were these black people? Were the Slavs black people? Why do they add an E to it and attach it to black people? See, this is the trick, right? The Slavs were an ethnic group, right? They were a group of people, like an ethnic group of people, like Israel and Israelites, Judahites, you know what I mean? Ethiopians, you know what I'm saying? On that level, right? But the Slavs were an ethnic group that inhabited a large part of Eastern Europe. But who were in Eastern Europe? The Khazars over there, the Ashkenazis were over there, Yugoslavia, Slovakia, Slav, right? So we need to give the Slavs back their word, right? It's an insult to us and it's an insult to them. The word slave has multiple meanings, really. It has multiple meanings because it's a con game. It's a con game. It's a trick word. It's English grimoire, grammar. It's spellcraft. That's why they call it spelling, right? That's why they call it spelling. Add an E to it, now it becomes slave. Take the E away, it is Slav. What kind of trick is this? What kind of trick is this? Someone who is owned as property, especially in involuntary servitude. Oh, involuntary servitude. They don't have a choice in the matter. Someone who is subservient to or controlled by another. See, these are vague, very vague terms, right? Someone who works extremely hard. Vague terms. Right? This is what they call, this is not etymology here. This is con. This is the con game. This is connotation. Right? Someone who acts out the role of the submissive partner in a sadomasochistic relationship. Wow. You saw that one right there? Someone who acts out the role of the submissive partner. All right, Negroes, hear this, right? Submissive partner in a sadomasochistic relationship. I think I heard Farrakhan one time say that the experience of black people of America and this system of things is like a woman in an abusive relationship. I think I heard him say something like that one time. Notice that the last multiple meanings, right? Multiple spells, right? That they work on people. Because if you believe it, they'll let you believe it. That's what they call it, make believe, right? What we're seeking here to do is show and prove. Whether you want to believe it or not, we give you the evidence, right? Unless you have evidence to the contrary, well, you can believe what you want to believe, right? But we shall know the truth, and the truth shall set us free, right? Someone who acts out the role of the submissive partner in a sadomasochistic relationship. That's a whole other video right there. Was the relationship, right, of black people, was black people in a sadomasochistic relationship, all right? So I can understand why some, pull away from so-called Christianity, but we have to label it what it is and what it was. White Christianity, or better yet, WASP Christianity, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, or in a more academic terminology, right, Gentile Christianity, the Christianity that went into Europe, right, became Protestant, came over here to the New World, to the Americas, right, and then stole people, enslaved the Beta Israel, and brought them over here to the America, the North Country called America, and throughout the Caribbean, the Americas, North and South America, and throughout the Caribbean. Now, historians debate whether terms such as unfree laborer or enslaved person should be used instead of slave to describe the victims of slavery. Look how they're doing. This is what he talk about. What he talk about? They call it what is it? Rewriting history. Is it called rewriting history? Right, where they rewrite history. Right, like they're trying to take it out the school books. You hear about that? They're trying to rewrite. Trying to take slavery out of it. Why? Because we caught them in their big white lie. Right? Not a little white lie. We caught them in the big white lie. So here they're telling us that historians debate, right, whether terms, they want to say, well, y'all wasn't Slavs. Why? Because we're exposing it. People like us have been exposing this, and now they're saying, man, anybody can use Chat GPT and they can go and find out this truth for themselves. So let's flip it up. This is the same way they flipped up what the Bible said, servant, and made people believe that it was on the Bible authority that they were enslaving people. And they try to make people think that, well, slavery, that what the white man did, it wasn't his fault. It was because he was a Christian. No, the question is, when did the white man become a Christian? Right? The white man during the time of chattel slavery, when was he a Christian? Right? Was he a Christian before the beating or after the beating? Right? Did he have remorse after the beating and he repented? Was he a Christian before the rape? Right, of the grandmothers and the wives and the women and the daughters, right, and even the sons and the men too. Actually, what do you call it? The back breaking, buck breaking, buck. I was about to say butt breaking, but buck breaking. That was going on in certain places, like certain islands. I heard about it, like in Jamaica and elsewhere. Where they had homosexual rape and relate. I know people don't like because nowadays there's a PC, but this is all factually. See, we have to keep talking about it and document it before they try to erase it. That's what they told the historians want to debate. Unpaid, like unpaid laborer. What? Excuse me? Enslaved person. Well, truly, we were not Slavs. To that point there, we were not Slavs. Slavs is an ethnic group of people that don't really have anything to do with us as Beta Israel or black and African related people brought it here to the Americas and the Caribbean, right? That's the first thing we want to really share right there. Now, there's some more documents, but I'm looking at the time here, right? And want to keep it. Now, notice what it says right here. Wives, slaves, and servant girls. Notice the distinction. They introduced the term slave so they can get another line of product, right? They introduced the term slave so they can get a whole new line of product and make whole new rules for it. Because the white man was really using the Bible, right? If he was a Christian, right? Because he says he was a Christian, He came to America allegedly, right? So he can live like a Christian and read his Bible and live like a Christian, a believer in Jesus, right? But look what he did. I mean, look what he did. And look how he lied on the Bible to justify himself. I know on the podcast we talked about the curse of Ham. There's no such thing. You can't find one verse in the Bible that says curse of Ham. He even lied on the Bible, right? Even there was the curse of Ham. It was the curse of Canaan, right? You see how that goes right there? Now notice the cover of this particular book right here. It says wives, slaves, and servant girls. So what is the difference, pray tell, between a slave girl and a servant girl? Tell me, right? See, so they introduced this term Slav and slave, like they introduced it in your mind, make you believe that when the white man read the Bible, he was reading the NIV, right? Or he was reading the ESV, right? Or the ISV or one of these other new translation over the last 20, 30 year Bible. No. He was reading the KJV. As we showed you already, the KJV had slave one time in the Old Testament and one time in the New. And guess what we find out? Both of those are false translation. He shouldn't have even put it there, right? In Revelation 18:13, right, it's actually bodies, not slaves. And in Jeremiah, right, he shouldn't have even added that word there, right? Is Israel homeborn? Im Yalid Bayitu? Is he not born in the house? Right? So how is he spoiled? Right? He's born in the house, the Bait Israel, Beta Israel. How is he spoiled? Right? But notice this right here. This is an interesting cover. I wanted to show you this right here, where they actually use side by side the two terms, right? From 1770 to 1783. They use wives, they say slaves and servant girls. What is the difference between slave and a servant girl? Oh, they're slave, that's the basic property, right? But then if they want to come up, they want to bring one of the slave girls on a come up, they'll basically call her a servant. And then they might treat her a little more what? Biblically, right? Biblically, because servant, it is mentioned there in the Bible, servant, right? So in all those verses and chapters, Torah, in the 5 books of Moses and elsewhere, where it's talking about servitude and servants and bond servants, the distinction is servant and bond servant. There's a distinction there, right? But the term Slav is a false term that have absolutely nothing to do with the Bible, right? So when the white man, the European, during the time of the crime here in the Americas, over that 400 years here in Americas, when he was reading the Bible and justifying, he was self-righteousness, right? Yeah, he was self-righteousness, right? Self-righteously trying to justify himself by the Bible. He was lying, right? And the interesting thing is, the lie was so, what says, what does God say in the word? The deceiver and the deceive are both in his hand, right? The deceiver and the deceive, right, are both in his hand, right? Slavery. So you see all these things, slavery, right? Servants. You see what it says? Servants obey, right, in all things your master, not slave, right? They like to do that little slash and add it on there, right? They like to add it on there. But when you actually are reading the text itself, it doesn't mention nothing about, right, slave. Slave is a superimposed term, right? The white man did not follow the Bible, right, in his practice of so-called slavery. Why? Because slavery is not anywhere in the Bible. It's nowhere in the 400-year time of the crime Bible, King James Version. It's nowhere there. So the question is, where did he, right? Where did he get that term from? Where did he get it from? The devil, right? The devil made him do it? No, he want to say that the Bible made him do it, right? If the Bible made him do it, then the most time they would have had a slave right, or servant, right, would have been, what, 6 years? Unless you say he loved his master and he got earrings, a hole, his ear bored to the door, right? Then maybe he'd be forever with his master, right? Because master gave him a wife and he got children now, as it says in the Torah. But he never followed those things. He made up his own rules, right? He used that as a pretext. And here's the funny thing. Since the Protestants, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, made it a big point that they wanted to read the Bible, and the Bible was so fundamental to knowing the biblical truth for themselves, that when they was lying to themselves, the white man lied to himself. He lied to us, but moreover, he lied to himself and his children. That's why a lot of them today will argue. They'll argue, try to say, well, it wasn't them. Bond servant versus slave. Isn't there a difference? There's a big difference. Bond servant is covered by the scripture, right? Slave is not. Check. Bond servant is covered. You know why slave is not? Because slave comes from Slav. Slav is an ethnic group of people, right? The Bible is not dealing with the Slav. It's dealing with the children of Israel, right? But they call the children of Israel, right, Slavs, right? And then added the E to it, slave, right? And then say, well, this is what the Bible said. Liar. He's a liar, right? That's why it says that they will say that our fathers have inherited lies. All right, so here's the verse for you right here. Here's the verse, Jeremiah 16:19. Yahweh, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles shall come to thee from the ends of the earth, the other nations other than Yisrael, the Gentiles, the Goy, the Goyim, right? The Goyim shall come to thee, the heathen, the Gentiles, the nations shall come to thee from the ends of the earth and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, right? So white Anglo-Saxon Christianity, so-called counterfeit Christianity that most people call Christianity, right, is part of that inherited lie, right? We didn't say Christian. We know that's in the Bible, but Christianity, especially white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christianity, right, is a lie. Surely, they will say what? Surely our fathers, right? What, the founding fathers, America founding fathers, the one who wrote the Constitution, right? All men are created equal, right? And yet he was shagging, right, his very own so-called slave, right? That was his property. Surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, right? And things, right? And wherein no profit. There's no profit out of it. That's why they're trying to run away from it, right? They're trying to run away from it so fast, right? They're trying to change up terminology. Well, it's actually, slave and servant is the same thing. Don't let them lie to you, my people. Servant and slave is not the same thing. Check it out. I owe you $1,000 US, right? But instead, I go get $1,000 Jamaican dollars and I give it to you. I could say, yo, I owe you $1,000. I come bring you Jamaican dollars, right? Is that the same thing? No, right? That's the game they're trying to play, right? That's the wool they're trying to pull. Now, as we pick up, we'd like to pick up on a little bit more of this. This is one of our main, right? The main things we really want to share, right? We had found this some years ago, right? We found this some years ago right here. Let's bring it out right here, right? This document is called Christianity and Slavery, Catholic Church and Slavery, Christianity, Anti-Slavery, and like Catholicism. It's like a 20-page. We had saved this some years ago. Actually, we saved this. Let's see if do we have a date on this. 2009. You see at the bottom, 11/27/2009. I don't know if that website is even up there. It was a document, Christianity and Slavery. It was a page that was up there. We PDF'd it, right? And we want to go into this a little more in detail as we open up the whole Protestantism. So when we talk about slavery, right, and white Christianity, right? Slavery and white Christianity, right? Slavery not in King James Version, not in the KJV, right? This is not a little white lie, right? Right? I thought white lie is a big lie, right? But see how they play with us? Oh, a black lie. Then they talk about blackmail. Blackmail. What do you mean blackmail? I'm a black male. Oh, we won't be under blackmail. What do you mean? Oh, blackmail. No, not blackmail, but blackmail. You see the trick? That's why they call it a spell. Right? It's a spelling here. You see over here, that letter, you got to write that letter, but you don't say the letter, but you write the letter. Why are we going to write the letter but not say the letter? Right? Notice, what changes from Slav to slave? Right? A E? But we don't pronounce the E. We don't say Slave, 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 Slavi, Slave. No. But they say it's pronounced different. It's like J-E-S-U-S is Jesus. J-E-S-U-S is Jesus. But they make you believe, another lie, to say Jesus. Zeus. Now if you say, oh, no, you're making up things because, you are an addict, right? You become addicted to the lie, right? And this is not going against Christ, Yeshua, right? This is going against those who will lie in his name. What did the master say Jesus Christ say? And so we say Jesus instead of Jesus, right? What did he say? Many shall come in my name, right? They come in my name and say they are Christ. Look, they came in Jesus' name, right? And then they painted him just like themselves, right? And then they pushed the Bible around on everybody and say, oh, you need this for salvation in the next life when you go to heaven in the next life. But in this life, let us take from you, land, wealth, property, name, everything that's valuable in this life, take it from you. And you're going to live like an enslaved person. But in the next life, you'll go to heaven. And when we go to heaven, right, the pearly white gates, we're going to have to be around more of you white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christians. Right? Like I said, when did the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christian become Christian? And please don't tell us about, all these white people that died to free you. Let's talk about the black people that died to free black people. Why can't we say that? Right? Is there something wrong with saying that? Of course there's something wrong. Right? Because they've inherited lies. They believe that it's really a few of those abolitionists, right, who did so much. Yes, they raised money, but it was the captive who wanted to be free. You see, who wants to be free more than the one who is the captive? Even if I help somebody out who is captive, right, doesn't that captive want to be free? Right? You know what I'm saying? So I'm going off of his motivation to be free. But they lied to us, right? Even during Black History Month, especially then, you know what I mean? That, all these good white people who died to free you in the Civil War. No, they died to uphold the Union. Even Abraham, right? Not our Abraham, but their Abraham Lincoln said, if he could keep the Union together and not free a single slave, he would do so. He would do so. I guess some of them, they figure Abraham, give us that old time religion, good enough for Abraham, right? See, they think they're talking about Abraham Lincoln. To prevent any mistakes, especially the Protestant branch of Western Christian Church got very skilled in spiritual, virtual juggling with the labels. This opening verse right here, right? This opening verse, right? Let's see if we can zoom in because it's a little tight. To prevent any mistakes, especially the Protestant branch of Western Christian Church